This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, sir. Let us start this session. Right. Sir, in the last class, we were speaking about contracts. Kada? That is what we were discussing, my friends. Contracts. So there I have explained about quantity contract. That is what we have discussed, quantity contract. Then, my friends, comes the next one called value contract. The next one called value contract. Sir, the quantity contract is purely based on quantity. That's what we have seen yesterday. Value contract, that is something is purely based on the value. As the name itself says, my friends, it is purely based on value. So here, value is the criteria, but not the quantity. In yesterday's class, we have seen creating contract. There we have entered quantity like 100 pieces, 200 pieces, something like this, my friends. We have entered quantity. But right now, we are speaking about another contract called value contract. Friends, this is a contract that is purely based on value. So while creating this contract, we will clearly specify. While creating this contract, my friends, we will clearly specify. This contract, for example, is for 1 lakh. So during the specified time period, the customer has to obey this contract by placing orders up to 1 lakh. So the commitment is for 1 lakh, my friends. So the commitment is for 1 lakh. And here in this contract, my friends, I said value is the criteria. So here the customer can place orders. The customer can place orders for any material. The customer can place orders for any material up to that specified value 1 lakh, up to that specified value 1 lakh, or my friends, or you can give a choice to the customer. You can give a choice to the customer saying that yes, the customer must be placing orders only for these materials. A choice saying that the customers must be placing orders only for these materials. Clear, my friends? That group of materials, guys, that group of materials is actually called as assortment module. Friends, that group of materials is actually called as assortment modules. Assortment module means there you specify which materials only. Friends, there you specify which materials only must be ordered by the customer so that the sales orders against that value contract must be processed for those materials only. So that the sales order must be processed for those materials only, my friends. So that is called as assortment module. So either the customer can place orders for any materials, or my friends, the customers can be placing orders only for some selected group of materials called as assortment module. So whatever the option you want, my friends, you can go with those options. You can go with those options. Am I clear? Right, sir. So let us see how to create the assortment module. Sorry, how to create value contract with assortment module and without assortment module. Both we will discuss, my friends. Both we will discuss. Okay, na? Right. Already in yesterday's class, we have seen the transaction code PA41. Already in yesterday's class, my friends, we have seen the transaction code VA41. So that is the transaction code by using which we create the contract. So open this. Sir, there are two things: value contract with assortment module, value contract without assortment module. Both we have, my friends. Okay, na? So let us speak about both of them. First, see WK1. When you open this contract, there, my friends, it is asking for assortment module. It is asking for assortment module. So this is a contract. This is a contract that has to be used, that has to be created rather, that has to be created by using assortment module. Means what? First we have to create this assortment module, my friends. First we have to create this assortment module. So let me show you first way to create the assortment module. Friends, let me show you where to create the assortment module. Okay, na? Right, sir. See the screen. Logistics, sales and distribution, master data, products, assortment, value contract, assortment module. So that is the transaction code. WSV2 create. Friends, WSV2 create, that is the transaction code by using which we can create the assortment module. Okay, na? Right, sir. So here, just say enter, and here, my friends, as I told you, you have to specify. You have to specify which materials are to be ordered by that customer. That's what, my friends, we have to specify. Which materials must be ordered by that customer. That is what the system is asking for here. Sir, before that it is okay, some description, whatever you want to enter, from which date to which date it is valid. Then you keep on entering all those materials. For instance, say for example, I am keeping 3 materials in this assortment module, my friends. I am keeping 3 materials here in the assortment module. So in this case, where we have 3 materials, and the moment we save this assortment module, a number will be generated. By using this assortment module number, we have to create the value contract. See, so VA41, WK1, open this, enter the customer here, then see here, enter the value assortment module number, and then here enter the value. Sorry, here value has to be entered, some value, for example 1 lakh. Remaining everything description valid, from valid to all those things, my friends, you fill. Okay, right sir. Now see the screen. Let this come. Now the most important thing comes here about document type and item category. Before I explain this, friends, before I explain this, here, when you go to this value is 1 lakh. So net value has been updated as 1 lakh. Go to conditions tab page. There you must have a condition type, my friends. There you must have a condition type. This is the thing you have to understand. There is a new condition type WK00. There is a new condition type, my friends, WK00. So that is the condition type that you people have to use. Sorry, if I use PR00 condition type for price, PR00 is only for a particular material. PR00 is only for a particular material, but there is no material here. Now we are speaking about the whole contract itself. Friends, we are speaking about the whole contract itself. So my friends, there is absolutely no need, or you should not use the condition type PR00. We have to use WK00. Whatever the value, contract value we have, that value will be taken as the value of WK00. So now what it says, now it is clearly indicating that you people have to use, now you people have to use a new pricing procedure, my friends. You have to use a new pricing procedure. So in that new pricing procedure, you have to place this, you have to place this particular condition type WK00. That's what, my friends, you have to use. WK00 is the condition type that we have to use in that new pricing procedure. Am I clear, my friends? Right. And now the next thing. So based on this contract, now you create sales orders, you create delivery, you create invoice. Those things are common, my friends. Please you go through all those options. Okay, now I'm going to explain the configurations to be made behind this. Now let us speak about the configurations to be made behind using this contract, my friends. So see the screen, sir. First, I am talking about the document type. WK1. So that is the document type, my friends. We are speaking about WK1. As already we people know, every document type is controlled by document category. So for contracts, yesterday also we have seen, my friends, the document category is G. G is for contracts. Next one, sir, the screen has been changed because while creating this contract, friends, while creating this contract, in that screen we have fields like assortment module. So all those fields and everything have been changed. Fields are changed means screens are changed. Fields are changed, my friends, means screens are changed. So we have to change the screen sequence group. Friends, we have to change the screen sequence group. That is the other important thing, my friends. So change the screen sequence group. So the screen sequence group is WK. Then transaction group 4 only, because we are using VA41. That is the same old transaction code that we are using for creating this. So the transaction code remains the same, my friends. Next one, sir. No shipping and no billing data. Literally shipping and billing. Literally shipping and billing. These two sections, my friends, must be left blank. Shipping and billing sections must be left blank. Okay, na? Fine, sir. And now comes the next important point. Follow the screen. Item category. That is another important configuration, guys. Here, item category. Sir, whenever you are speaking about item category, my friends, this item category is in fact completely different. This item category, in fact, is completely different. Is completely different from the item category that we are using for agreements. See, there is an item category WKN. Why I am saying it is completely different? Sir, 1 second. Let me show you the functionalities. Now see, okay, here also first thing, you should not have schedule line data. Friends, you should not have schedule line data. So that is the first fundamental thing. First fundamental thing is that only. You should not have schedule line data for contracts. In fact, that is the biggest difference. That is the biggest difference between agreements and contracts, my friends. So the contracts should not have the schedule line data. So what we need to do in that item category, you have to decheck the field schedule line data. And next one, sir, completion rule. Completion rule actually speaking about, friends, completion rule is actually speaking about when the status of that contract is going to be completed. That is what completion rule is actually speaking about. Now guys, listen to me carefully. Now in this case, the contract is purely based on value. My friends, in this case, the contract is purely based on value, not the quantity. It is purely based on value. So my friends, if you look at the screen here, what I have done is completion rule I have kept it to E. The status of this contract is completed. The status of this contract is completed after, see, the value has been referenced. After the target value has been referenced. Sir, it is not about quantity. It is not about quantity. It is all about the target value. So after the target value has been referenced, the status of this value contract is going to be completed. That is what, my friends, we are speaking about. Okay, next important point. See the screen. Okay, pricing is fine, but no billing, because bill is not based on contracts. As yesterday also we have discussed this point, sir. Bill is something that is based on order. So with reference to this contract, I said we are going to create the order. Based on that order, we create delivery invoice, all those things. Now the thing is, see, this is the difference. You have to check this option, order quantity is equal to 1. Friends, we have to check this option, order quantity is equal to 1. Why? Because, listen to this logic. In the SAP system, the system is designed in such a way, that without the quantity, the values cannot be updated, right? Friends, without the quantities, the values cannot be updated. That's how the SAP screens are designed, my friends. But here you are speaking about a document which itself does not contain any quantity. You are speaking about a document which itself does not contain any quantity, because the contract itself, friends, the contract itself is based on value. The contract itself is based on value. So literally no quantity, nothing. So if that is the case, how the values are going to be updated? How the system is going to update the values? That is the reason why internally, friends, that is the reason why internally the system is going to consider the quantity as one piece. Friends, that is the reason why internally the system has to consider the quantity as one piece. Sir, someone mic is on, Andy. Prithvi, it seems your mic is on, Sir Vijayamma. Right. Right, sir. Now listen to me. So, internally the system has to consider, internally the system has, Arey Prithvi. So how the SAP system knows that? This is important. For that, we are activating order quantity is equal to 1. Sir, we are activating this feature, order quantity is equal to 1. So what happens? Internally the system assumes that, okay, by default it is going to consider the quantity as one piece. By default, the system is going to consider the quantity as one piece. That's how it says. And next important thing, this is very, very important. See the screen. Sir, if the system has to determine any item category into your document, if the system has to determine any item category into your document, my friends, then shall we have some material or not, you tell me? Without the materials, how the system can determine the item category? This is the most important point. Without the materials, how the system can determine the item category. Very, very, very important. Very, very, very important. But there is no material, nothing, but the system is automatically picking. But the system is automatically picking an item category here. Without material, here the system is automatically picking an item category. So the question is how? So my friends, the question is how? How the SAP system is automatically picking the item category. Okay, na? Right, sir. Listen to me carefully. Coming back to here, item category, there already SAP has understood this, so they have given an entity here. They have given an entity here, my friends. Value contract material. So some default material you enter here. Friends, some default material, some default material you enter here. So if you enter some default material, my friends, that default material will be automatically determined. That default material will be automatically determined into your value contract. See, in the value contract, it is picking a material. But my friends, remember, this contract is something that is speaking about without material. Why? It is only meant for assortment module. It is only for assortment module. Friends, assortment module means no materials. Kada? Assortment module means no materials at all. Simply one module number is entered there. See, in this contract, some module number I have entered. No material, but still the system is automatically picking the material. That's what we have assigned here. Value contract material. Okay guys, this is another important point. This is another important point. Okay, na? Fine, sir. And now comes the next important thing. Contract release control. The next important thing we are speaking about here is contract release control. So what do you mean by this? Sir, contract release control means at the time of processing the sales order, at the time of processing the sales order with reference to that contract, at the time of processing the sales order with reference to that contract, my friends, if the sales order value, if the sales order value is more than the contract value, if the sales order value is more than the contract value, how the SAP system has to react? How the SAP system has to react? That is what, my friends, it is actually speaking here. Okay, now one more time I am repeating. One more time I am repeating, my friends. If the value of the sales order that is created with reference to contract, if that is more than the contract value, how the SAP system has to react? That is what, guys, contract release control field is actually speaking about. See the screen. There are different options. No response even if the target value is exceeded. Friends, no response even if the target value is exceeded. Then, which is not a best practice, A, warning message, B, error message if the value is exceeded, something like this, whether the contract shall be blocked or not. So all these things, my friends, we have to indicate here. All these things we have to indicate here, my friends. Okay, na? Fine, sir. That is what is controlled by this field. So these are all the functionalities. These are all the functionalities of your item category of value contract. These are all the functionalities of item category of value contract, my friends. Okay, guys. Right, sir. Now let us go to the next one. Second type of value contract. Sir, here also I am speaking about value contract only. But if this value contract wanted to be created for any material, sir, just now what I have explained, value contract with assortment module. Value contract with assortment module, that is what I have explained. Right? But my friends, the second provision is also available. What is that? You can directly create the value contract by specifying the required material, my friends. So rather separately creating the assortment module, you can create the value contract, and in that value contract itself, directly you can enter the assortment, directly you can enter the required materials. So whatever the option you want, sir, you can go with that option. See the screen. Where is this? Yeah. So one more value contract. We again I'm going to VA 41. There, WK2, value contract only, but it's directly based on material. Friends, value contract only, but it is directly based on the material. So that is also possible. Whatever you want, you can go with that. WK2 material element. Open this. And friends, if you look at this particular contract, as I already told you, this is directly asking for, friends, this is directly asking for the material itself. See, you enter the customer number, okay, all those things. Now directly enter material. So this contract is for which material, but not the quantity, value. Say this is for some 10,000 rupees, like this. Directly you can specify the material itself, my friends, here. Directly you can specify the material itself. Okay, na? So like this, there are two different types of contracts. One is creating the contract, value contract with assortment module, and my friends, the second one is without assortment module, where you can directly enter the required material itself. Remaining everything is same. Now based on this one, you create the order, delivery, invoice, these things you go through. Now let me explain the functionalities of this. Friends, let me explain how exactly this will work. So the main thing is here, if you look at this contract, we have actually changed the screen end. When you look at this contract, my friends, we have changed the screen. That is what you need to understand. So why I am saying that you changed the screen? Why? Because there earlier in that screen we have something called assortment module number and all those things. But my friends, here, do you have assortment module and all those things? No, we don't have them here. So the screen has been changed, my friends. The screen has been changed. If the screen has to be changed, means in the document type functionality, what we have to change is screen sequence group. That's what we have to change. So we have to change the screen sequence group. So open the document type, my friends. WK2. Everything is same except the screen sequence group. Friends, everything is same except the screen sequence group. So that in fact has to be changed. Okay, na? Right, sir. Remaining all the functionalities are literally same. Remaining all the functionalities are literally same as your previous contract. Sir, what is that previous contract? That previous contract, same value contract but without assortment module. That is value contract without assortment module. Clear, my friends? Fine, sir. Now see the screen. Sir, because of the screen sequence group, the screen has been changed so that we are getting the field material directly rather the field assortment module. Directly we are getting the field material rather the field assortment module. Okay, na? So the screen has to be changed. This is the only difference, my friends. And now comes the next one. Item category is same. It is not going to be changed, my friends. The item category is going to be same. It is not going to be changed like previously WKN whatever we have used. Here also same item category. That is not going to be changed, my friends. Okay, now right. Okay, next point. Sir, when you are speaking about this contract, because directly we have entered the material itself, same that material value itself will be target value. So for this contract also, the same condition type which I have explained earlier, WK00. Friends, the same condition type which I have explained earlier, WK00, that is the condition type, my friends, we have to use here. WK00 only we have to use. So for value contract with assortment module, whatever the pricing procedure we have used, the same pricing procedure again as it is will be used for this material, for this contract also. Now what is this? Value contract same but without assortment module. Value contract same but without assortment module, my friends, we are using. This is how it goes. Clear, sir? Two more contracts are there: master contract, service contract. Tomorrow I'll explain this, and tomorrow I am going to conclude the contracts, and tomorrow we will go to other topic, my friends. Okay, na? That's it, sir. Once again, sorry for today's late. Previous batch was asking me lots of questions, so I have to take more time for them. Okay. Right, sir. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow.